Welcome to Y Nada Más, a Real Madrid podcast.
All right. How is everybody doing on this fine weekday? It's Tuesday. I had to push back the day, but as I promised, I'm going to stay on top of this thing. I'm going to do as much as I can to stay on top of this thing and not fall by the wayside. That's the whole idea of doing the podcast. That's the whole idea of making sure, it's what I like to do. And then I start jumping on, Twitter or X as it's now called. I start jumping on Twitter and X in order to, give my points of view and stuff and a lot of what's going on. So one of the things, I know I died off for a little bit. So if you guys are listening to me on the podcast, head over to X, head over to Twitter. I know Twitter's craziness and it's toxic here and there. And a lot of people give crazy opinions on things, but football Twitter, even though that's crazy too, my spot, I try to keep it chill. So make sure you follow me there on Twitter at Y Nada Más Podcast or at X at Y Nada Más Podcast. And then also on Facebook, also on Instagram. So on Facebook, I'm at Y Nada Más Podcast as well. And on Instagram, I am at YNM Podcast. So I'm doing pretty much all the design stuff myself now. The last few days I made some templates and stuff, and then occasionally I'll throw in some stuff. Been playing around a lot with Midjourney as of late, getting some animated stuff and trying to see what I can do. I was doing it for my job, and then I decided, I was doing it for my job and playing around because everybody's jumping into the AI space right now and trying to figure out what this is gonna. And as a designer, I think it's a tool. It's a good tool to kind of get some inspiration and play around with things. I don't think Midjourney is going to make you necessarily a better designer. If you're doing graphic design, because Midjourney doesn't do text and stuff like that. So there's still a lot of things that you have to do, but it's a cool tool to kind of get an idea of maybe composition and different things like that. But that's a whole other conversation for you graphic design heads out there. And, now they're doing stuff with, I was looking at, I think it's Gen 2 or Runway or something, where you can even do, videos and you can animate AI videos, which is pretty crazy as well. But, there's a lot of stuff going on there that I'm trying to kind of see how I can use for the podcast and play around with that stuff. So, in addition to that, obviously have Halal and Trombach are still part of Y Nada Más podcast. I was just chatting with them today. It's just everybody's busy. Trombach's in university. Halal's got his day job. I got my day job. I am actually today I'm actually working from home essentially, which hopefully they don't hear my podcast, but. I'm supposed to be working from home at least right now, but the thing is I had to take my dog to the vet, so took some time off to do that, and then we'll be returning to do what I have to do. But decided to take a quick few minutes to put this thing together and talk a little bit about what's going on with Real Madrid and what's going on in the football world too, because now I want to not just Real Madrid. Obviously, I have a lot of opinions about football world, about how the state of football as it is. I guess today we got some news this morning that they want Rubiales to step down from the federation. I guess the president or the prime minister. I guess the prime minister of Spain, who is Pedro Sanchez, I believe, is asking Rubiales to step down based on this whole debacle with him. Kissing kissing one of the players from the women's Spanish national team, and just totally just grabbing her by the face and and kissing her like, like she was his wife or some shit. It's wild, man. Some people are wild. And then like grabbing his crotch, while he's celebrating, surrounded by like people like the King of Spain and like, it's like, dude, I get it. I don't want to hate on the guy as much because I get it. I get, you get excited and you go wild, especially in certain things, but there's a time and a place. There's a time and a place to go wild. Like if he's with his boys drinking beers and stuff like that, go ahead and grab your crotch and say, yeah, we did it or whatever. I'm personally not that type of guy. I've never grabbed my crotch when Real Madrid's won. I never did. Either the Simeone or the Cristiano like toma, whatever, or esta, and grabbing my nuts. It's not something that I do, so I don't know. I mean, but if that's you, that's you. But there's a time and a place to do it. And then kissing the player, I mean, that's just, come on, man. Like in this day and age, dude, like even if you're excited and, you're excited about something, that's wild to me. I work with a lot of women, and I work with a lot of women in my day job. That's like me getting excited about some like big thing that we got, like I got a promotion or something, and then like grabbing the face of my coworker and like kissing her on the mouth, man. Like I'd be fired in a second in the real world. Because even if, like I said, time and a place, man, even if you're like effusive, and then it's like, you got to keep your hands to yourself, man, especially if that's somebody you don't know. I mean, and he might be familiar with them, but unless it comes out that they're like a couple or something like that, there's no reason that he should be doing that, so it's just wild. And then either way, Rubiales is a scumbag, man. I mean, he's got there's a lot of things in the Spanish Federation that have been wild. I mean, I don't know about the whole Vilda thing, about him. I don't know whether he was just being a tough coach and so they wanted to bitch about it. The women wanted to, the women that stepped out wanted to, make a problem out of it. But anyway, it's a funny thing. And you know what? At the end of the day, it's an interesting situation that's going on there with the Federation. It's just, there's people that are toxic, man. I don't honestly feel like Vilda, from what I read, I don't honestly feel like, there's tough coaches that can be complete assholes, but it doesn't mean that they're bad coaches. There's the old, I mean, listen, I've always told you guys, like I come from a fighting background. So like my coaches, it's always in the gym. It's a lot of vulgarity. It's a lot of throwing, telling people, that they're pussies and all that kind of stuff. You're throwing that around all the time, and there's women in the classroom, and is it appropriate? No, man. But some of the toughest girls I met will, throw down and say some of the nastiest shit to other dudes too, just to, to motivate them. I don't want to say the words on the podcast, but they'll be there too, and because they were female fighters, and so it's kind of like if you're in that competitive space, I feel like a lot of people that complain about this kind of stuff, and now I'm not talking about the Rubiales thing because that I'm against, because then I think he's an idiot. Because if you're in a position of like, where you're kind of like not even kind of, you're the boss, essentially. You got to handle yourself with some sort of decorum, So in that regard, I understand that. With Vilda, from everything we've seen, I mean, everything I've seen is maybe like that he's abusive and that kind of stuff. Nothing was ever from like in the sexual nature and, from what I've read, right? So I'm just coming from my point of view. Don't come at me. But anyway, like it seems to be like he's just a tough coach, and then he was like pushing people, maybe pushing people like beyond. They were feeling injured, and he was like, nah, you got to push through it, and you got to go for it, and you got to try, and honestly, I know you have to conserve energy and all that kind of stuff in football, and players, sometimes you got to, even with fighting, I remember that you have to kind of sit your fighter down and be like, hey man, your leg is really hurt. If you go out there and fight and compete, you're probably not going to do well. And then at the end of the day, the one that's going to be disappointed is you. And what if you aggravate the injury and it gets worse and that kind of stuff? But fighters will push themselves beyond their limits, and sometimes as a coach, you kind of got to assess the situation and be like, okay, is my fighter being like a prima donna right now? Is he being a little bit of a diva and he just doesn't want to do it because his foot hurts a little bit, his or her foot hurts a little bit? Or does he have a serious injury? So that's kind of what I feel is like, what are the inner workings of that? Was it because, were they saying it because they just didn't feel like it that day. And so he's trying to push him hard and he might be a little bit tough. I mean, I don't know. So in that regard, I don't get that whole kind of thing. I honestly feel like, if that's your job and that's what you're pushing for, and you're trying to win a World Cup and you're trying to compete at a high level, sometimes you got to take the pain and you got to go for it. It's part of the game. Sometimes it's part of competition a lot of times. And sometimes you take the risk, which sucks too. Sometimes even as a coach, you take a risk and you force a fighter to go for it. And it kind of shoots you in the foot. You shoot yourself in the foot. I remember pushing a kid to fight. He was so nervous before the fight. I think it was going to be his first fight, and he was super worried about going into the ring. And I kind of tried to convince him, like, nah, dude, you're going to be fine. This kid was shaking. This kid was nervous. But this was like my very first time being, stepping into the ring. I mean, sorry, being a cornerman or a coach for a fighter. So I pushed that kid, and that kid he didn't do well at all. The nerves got to him. He didn't do well at all. And honestly, I ruined it for him because the kid never really wanted to fight again. So you learn from that kind of stuff because, you realize sometimes you can push somebody so far where you're actually ruining their love for the sport, or you're pushing somebody and telling them, face your fears, and they're going to come out the other end a better person. So it's really a tough thing to be a coach too. I mean, and I'm just talking about one instance, but we always talk about when we were in coaching, at least, when I was coaching, and again, this has nothing to do with, it's not football, but coaching for me, I was always, it's a hard thing because you're dealing with egos too. You're dealing with a person's ego. Some fighters are too confident for their own good. And they do and say things that really as you say, your mouth is writing checks that your body can't cash, essentially. So, they think they're gonna win everything, and then you're kind of telling them, hey man, hold on, I know you got the confidence, but at the same time, you got to train, you got to work hard, you can't just be lazy, So now I think about it is when. And this is amateur level, maybe semi-pro level, essentially for what I was doing, and then talking to some pros here and there. But when it comes to, so I kind of extrapolate that and take it to the football game, right, to the game of football, and I wonder, how must it be for a coach to manage, 20-something people in a dressing room, right, 23 players in a dressing room, essentially. To manage 23 different egos, 23 different people, 23 different personalities, 23 different work ethics, and try to get them all to where you play the strengths off of each other and essentially find the perfect team to win, right? So in a lot of ways, for anything they said about him, and, I do remember that, 12 women stepped out of the team, 15 stepped out, and then some of them came back, essentially, like Aitana Bonmati and Alexi Putellas wasn't really part of that group, but I know that some dude did come back. And, there's people hating on him because they came back and like that they turned their back on their sisters, essentially, and they took their, on their teammates and that kind of stuff. And then but at the end of the day, man, like, Rubiales just kept Vilda on board, and, Vilda did prove to win the World Cup. I mean, he helped them win the World Cup. Now, obviously, managers are one thing, players are another thing, and the players did what they had to do. They did their jobs. But tactically, if he's setting them up correctly and he's making the changes he needs to change, like he did with Salma, right, and bringing her in, and then he had to switch out Misa, and unfortunately, he brought in the backup goalkeeper, which her name escapes me. I know she's a backup goalkeeper for Barcelona. He had to make moves, and those moves ended up winning them the World Cup. So at the end of the day, the guy was kind of proven correct, whether you like it or not. And honestly, I feel like if he's not being abusive in like, if he's not being like creepy, and he might be, maybe he's pushing it a little bit in the way he's talking to them. I don't know, man. Part of me is like, dude, just nut up or shut up, just do it. Just do it. I mean, the coaches aren't there to be, they have to be good man managers, but they're not there to be your best friend. They're not there to be your babysitters. Like a lot of times we as coaches in fighting would say that, we have to be babysitters. We have to be psychologists. We have to be, best friends. But then at the same time, we also have to be coaches. So we have to try to baby you to a certain extent so that you don't leave and you don't you don't fall apart when you're going through some sort of emotional thing, which happens a lot in competition, especially in hard competition and in fighting, especially where you freak out, you get nerves, it happens. You step into the ring and you're shitting yourself. Listen, I never stepped into the ring where I wasn't scared. It was just that the bell rang and you kind of clicked, And I think the same thing happens, man. A lot of these players probably step into the game nervous as hell, and then as soon as the bell the whistle blows, they get into muscle memory and the training and years of training, and that is what experience is. I mean, that's what we've seen from the Real Madrid men's team so far. We've seen sort of nervy starts to these last two games because now we're seeing very young guys that don't have as much experience, And before they were surrounded by people with more experience, let's say like the Camavingas, Vinicius, Rodrigo. They were surrounded with other players that kind of had more experience than them. So, they had Carvajal, Luka Modric, Casemiro, Karim Benzema, so they had other players that had a bit more experience than them. But now, I think this season it's hit them a little bit where they're now the guys, they're now they know now. I think this is one of the seasons where they've been hit with that feeling like now is the time where you're the leaders now. There is no hand holding from the veterans anymore. The veterans aren't here. Benzema isn't here anymore. Luka Modric and Kroos are obviously taking a step back as in how many minutes they're going to play. Carvajal is also, although he's starting and he's doing so good so far, he's doing really well so far. There's really only one guy on the pitch that is essentially a very experienced player. And the other ones are still, well, they're experienced because they've won a Champions League, and they've been and they've played for other teams before, but this is, Real Madrid. This is heavy duty essentially. And now they're the starters, so I think that nervousness plays a factor. And so as a coach, you kind of got to push them hard, but at the same time, you got to tell them everything's going to be all right. So it's that psychology. So going back to the Spain thing, to the Spanish women's team, I think, if they're criticizing him because he's a little bit tough, man, I think whatever, man. They won the World Cup, and it's also as much as they want to say it's all the players too. Coaching is a big part, and his staff is important too. So, and listen, if you don't like women's soccer, that's on you. I'm going to talk about it because I thought it was a great World Cup. I was watching it because Colombia was in it, and I'm a fan of Linda Caicedo, and she's on the Real Madrid's women's team, and I'm a fan of Olga Carmona, and a fan of Atenea del Castillo. I'm a fan of Teresa Beleira, all of these players that play for Real Madrid Femenino, and I don't follow it as much, as I should, but I do follow it, of course, on Twitter and X, and I follow them on Facebook, and I see what they're doing, and I follow them on Instagram and see what they're doing. And I'm happy for the team when they're winning, essentially, and for Spain, and for the Women's World Cup, once Linda Caicedo, Colombia was out, I was looking at the other team. I remember enjoying the Euro too. So the Women's Euro where England won. So they went to the the final Euro, and England and Spain. And I really think women's soccer has come a long way, or women's football has come a long way. So it's really interesting, especially being here in the States where, everything's talked about with the United States women's team. But I always figured that this was going to happen, that this was going to pop up and happen, where the world was going to get their shit together, because obviously the U.S. hit the women's game quickly, when they're years behind in the men's game. But then you get powerful footballing countries like Spain, like England, like Sweden, countries that, do well, have their own leagues. They do well in the men's game. Germany, all these, France, you have all these teams that were kind of powerhouses when it comes to the women's game. To the men's game. And when they decide to finally get their act together, they're going to have all the resources. They're going to have talent. They're going to have talent pools, because I'm pretty sure, in England, in France, in Germany, I'm pretty sure there are plenty of women that play football and before weren't getting a chance to, really shine. And then as soon as, teams and clubs started throwing investment into women's leagues and the women's version of, let's say, of, the Wolfsburgs and let's say Bayerns and and of course Barcelona and Real Madrid now, and Juve and AC Milan, now they're coming all together. All these teams are coming all together. You're starting to see that those countries that have a footballing tradition and finally are starting to invest in those women, you're seeing results fairly quickly because of the fact that it's such a big part of their tradition. So they caught up, in my opinion, very quickly to the women's game because, it's not like football is the only thing that happens in this country, in the United States. So while they were ahead for quite some time, when the other teams that really have been football powerhouses got their act together, you're starting to see that gap minimize. And the women's football from Spain I thought was really great. So I'm not gonna continue talking about it because I know people are gonna shit a brick because they just can't handle the fact that women play soccer or play football. So, but whatever. That's on you, dudes. I thought it was pretty good. I thought it was cool. I was happy. I was happy for Olga Carmona. I was happy. So, enhorabuena España. Did a great job, And then for the Real Madrid girls as well, Linda Caicedo, Olga Carmona especially, with her dad passing away and all that stuff. So, I was happy about all that, and it was cool to see because at the end of the day, it's also part of Madridismo to see, the women's side of things as well. And I am more interested in seeing how Real Madrid Femenino does this season. I wish we could see, the games a little bit. They were a little bit easier to see, but I'm happy about it. So that was my opinion on that. Messi won the League's Cup. I saw a little bit of it. Whatever. As a sort of Inter Miami fan, but not anymore because they're a mini Barcelona and I can't stand it. But yeah, they won. And anyway, so moving into Real Madrid, it's been 20 minutes now and I'm sure you're pissed, but that's what we do here, man. I just ramble on about the things that I enjoy. So speaking of Real Madrid won their game against Almería. La ley del ex, the law of the ex happened, and Sergio Arribas scored a goal on Real Madrid. A very talented player from La Fábrica, from the Castilla, that I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure we do that a lot with our players that we bring up. We kind of send them to other teams and let them play on other teams for a while, and then if they do really well, we kind of bring them back. And we've seen it with Fran Garcia, we've seen it with Brahim Diaz, we've seen it with Carvajal. Carvajal went to Frankfurt for a bit. I mean, or was it Frankfurt? Leverkusen, I think, right? Yeah. So, we've seen that, and that's kind of what Real Madrid does. Could Ashraf Hakimi come back? Could Theo Hernandez come back at some point? Who knows? We don't know, but. That's kind of one of the things that Real Madrid does. So Sergio Arribas scores that first goal, which I think, Lunin isn't giving me a lot of confidence. But I don't want to hate on the kid because I feel like at the end of the day, man, he hasn't had minutes. So we're really going to see how he's going to play. Now, in the next game, is he going to play against Kepa? Is Ancelotti going to put in Lunin or is he going to put in Kepa? Who Kepa, of course, has more experience, So we're going to have to see how that's going to play out because Lunin actually, as the game went on, did a little bit better, and we were able to see that he did a pretty good job there. Our next game is against Celta. Not an easy team to play, and they have Rafa Benitez now. Is going to be is it Rafa Benitez or it's Benitez, right? That's his name? Fuck, man. I'm like, who is this guy's name? Right? That's his name, right? Anyway, the coach who used to coach for Real Madrid, and he was terrible when he coached for us. But then at the end of the day, he also, coached Liverpool and Valencia and did well with them. But he hasn't been the same coach as of late. But Celta de Vigo, what's going to happen with Gabri Vega? What's going to happen with those guys? Because I know that he's kind of looks like he might be on his way out and going to Napoli, which would be awesome because I'm a huge Napoli fan. As you guys know, I saw their games the other day. Napoli started off with a win, which the fact that we don't have a number 9 and we never looked at guys like Osimhen, who's an absolute beast, pisses me off because, we're still so fixated on this Mbappe thing and we're not looking at players that could potentially win us, do great things for us. And Osimhen is one of those strikers right now, aside from let's say the Vlahoviches of Vlahovic, aside from the big names, of course, like Haaland, Kane, Mbappe, of course, you had guys like Vlahovic, you have guys like Osimhen, so those guys are guys that maybe, yes, they're not of the world-class caliber of, let's say, a Harry Kane, or let's say, of course, a Mbappe or a Haaland. They are a step above, let's say, a Joselu, right? And they're young, and, they're somebody that you can look at long-term. Obviously, Jovic wasn't that. We thought we were going to get that with Jovic. That didn't happen. But Vlahovic I think is a different player, and I wouldn't mind seeing him, at Real Madrid, and hopefully we can see something move, whether or not Mbappe is finally going to move. But like I said, I don't want to mention that name anymore. He's like Voldemort at this point. Voldemort at this point is Mbappe. It's like the name you just don't want to mention because it just angers everybody. I was watching my good friend Jota. So Jota has a channel. He's got Jota Champions, Jota Real Madrid. He's got a bunch of Dr. Jota. He's got a bunch of things. If you look at, I think he also has, he's still doing Jota Real Madrid in English, or I think it's, I forgot what it was called. But anyway, he has his English channel too, so he does stuff too. So if you guys follow him, he has a live, which is in Spanish, but he interviews a lot of journalists like Jose Felix Diaz and what is this guy, Jose Luis Sanchez, and all these other guys some of them from El Chiringuito, some of them from Marca and other places. So, and he does a really good, and he's fed up. He was ranting about Mbappe. So I'm going to see if I can bring Jota on. I have a good relationship with Jota, so I'm going to see if I can bring him on to one of the podcasts upcoming, hopefully soon, as well as Halal and Trambach, to just kind of shoot the shit about the state of the team. But I think right now we're at a good spot. So we scored. So Bellingham has also obviously turned into an absolute gem, right? An absolute gem. He's an incredible player. Scored 2 goals, got an assist. Looking here at SofaScore, he has like a 9.4 rating. He got a 9.4 rating here on SofaScore. So you could see there, it's like right there. He got a 9.4 rating, and then he got, it was just, he got, like I said, 2 goals and an assist. He's a fighter, man. He's a fighter, and I think, and you know how that he's doing well is that English pundits, and shout out to my good friend Genius on Twitter that I chat a lot with. So, you see all these pundits from England, from the Prem, and they're like talking about how, we're wasting Jude Bellingham's talent because now he's playing in a position that's not really his good position. He's more of a deep lying playmaker. It's good for us because he's scoring, and they're going to love Jude Bellingham as long as he's scoring. And of course we're going to love him as long as he's scoring, don't you? And isn't he love his football as long as he's scoring? I mean, I don't understand the downside to it. I don't know where it's like a weird, they're hoping he fails in a way. Like, they love him and they're so pissed off he didn't go to the Premier League, and they're pissed off that he came to Real Madrid. So they kind of want him to fail, but they don't want him to fail, because I think part of it is they want him to do well so that they can be like, oh, the best player in the Premier League is English, and then, but at the same time, they want him to fail because they're mad that he didn't go to the Premier League. It's a really strange, paradox there that I don't understand what they're doing and why they're talking so much trash about it. But obviously the man is an absolute diamond, and that's no pun intended for the fact that we play currently in a diamond, and he's playing almost, as in a lot of ways kind of in a false 9 role, essentially being, in that second goal, being the guy who ran into the box in order to, turn into that number 9 position and be available for the header to score the second goal in the game. So, he's doing a lot of stuff. I mean, the comparisons to Zidane are there. Obviously, it's very quick, and I hate when people compare players to legends very quickly. Just let the guy, as you young people would say, let the guy cook. Let him do his thing. Let him, live his life. Let him play his football. He's enjoying it. He's said it as much already. He's enjoying his football, and let him feel good about it. Instead of like trying to bring up some sort of weird, I don't know, say that there's like problems or something. Man, I'm trying to get my seat's a little high here. Let me see if where's the thing to bring it down? Anyway, if you guys remember to watch me on YouTube, because I also have a video version of this podcast. And right now I'm searching my chair because I feel like I'm too tall and I'm a tall guy in real life, but I feel like I'm too tall right now. Anyway, so I was trying to bring the seat down a little bit because the top of my head is cut off in the frame. But anyway, oh, there it is. Hey, we go. All right. So now I feel a little bit better. So, yeah. So remember to follow us on Y Nada Más podcast on YouTube so you can see the YouTube version of this podcast. And subscribe to it. Subscribe and hit that subscribe button and, help us grow this podcast. So I think the downside, so far from what I've seen of the team, I'm liking what I'm seeing. I am cautiously optimistic. I know obviously there are issues with the fact that we don't have a number 9, and the number 9 is an issue. We do have Joselu who can come on, and of course he's probably going to be a super sub. And I want Joselu to do well. I happen to like the guy. But he's 33 years old, going to be 34 years old, I believe. So we have to see how that's going to work out. And especially in the structure that we're playing, which is 4-4-2, I do not, with that diamond in the middle, I don't know if Joselu, unless you move to a 4-3-3, so let's say you take out somebody from the midfield in order to turn it back in order to put 3 people in the midfield, and then because you have Rodrigo and you have Vinicius, and then you bring in Joselu, you take out one of the midfielders and you put it as a 4-3-3, and then you can see if Joselu will, change things for you if that's like another option now, which I think is a good option to have, but obviously you would want to so one of the things, speaking with my good friend Halal, he was saying I'm not really feeling the diamond formation too much because of the fact that Vinicius and Rodrigo are really we're not seeing the best out of them too. Now, I feel that Rodrigo is doing a better job in that position because Rodrigo Ancelotti, or Rodrigo, you want to be Portuguese, Rodrigo is doing a pretty good job so far, and I've liked how I've seen him move on the pitch because he was used to playing. I mean, you're already playing Rodrigo out of position because we all know he would be far better playing on the left, but that's Vinicius's realm, right? So he's playing on the right, and he's been playing on the right. And then they started using him occasionally more centrally when Benzema wasn't available. So almost essentially as the number 9. And he did a pretty good job there too. So, or he was at least used to playing. So I think Rodrigo has taken to this formation and been a little bit more, I would say I've seen him be a little bit more dangerous than Vinicius has. I feel like Vinicius is the one that unfortunately we see struggling. And to see Vinicius struggling is not a good thing to watch because essentially that is our guy that is the star of the team. Now, am I worried that he's not going to be able to adapt? No, I think Vinicius is going to be able to adapt. I think it's going to take a few games for him to adapt to that position. I do kind of not like the body language I'm seeing a little bit from him, where he seems a little bit lazy. He's drifting wide. He continues to drift wide. So what you're seeing is, they kind of are naturally, they're still in their muscle memory. And I was talking about this the other day with a friend. The muscle memory of the Real Madrid team, especially with guys like Vinicius and Rodrigo, their muscle memory is still imagining that Benzema is in the middle. So we saw a lot of crosses to absolutely nowhere, where it's almost like they're feeling like the guy that should be there is Benzema, and there is nobody there. So Vinicius runs into the box. He runs up the left flank. He then cuts into the box, tries to put a ball into the center, and Rodrigo's too wide, or vice versa. Rodrigo is moving in from the right. He cuts into the box. He essentially does the pullback pass, and there's nobody in the box to receive it because now Vinicius is still too wide, or Vinicius didn't make the run to the center. And now you're kind of seeing that Bellingham is the one that's kind of moving up a little bit occasionally to try to fill that void, which isn't really his job either, so that is the situation that we currently find ourselves in, which is why, even though I'm cautiously optimistic, because I feel like these guys are young, they're strong, they're hungry. Now is their time to shine. I think they're taking it in stride that now they are the Madrid. They are the Real Madrid, and I like that. We have to see how they're going to fare. Although I feel like Athletic is not an easy team to play in San Mamés. So I think we did a good job with that. Almería, of course, Almería is a team that, a lot of people think might go down, and so far they're in last place. So they're not a team I'm really looking at as, are they going to be able to really do something, and were they a huge challenge for Real Madrid? No, I mean, Celta Vigo obviously was fighting up until the last minute relegation last season, and they weren't at their best, but you still have some solid players on Celta Vigo. They can give you headaches. We are playing them at Balaidos, so we have to see how that game is going to fare. They can always make it tough on you, so we'll see what happens. But, I still feel the team is a little bit nervy. I still feel like that nervousness there, that they're trying to put things together. I think Fran Garcia is an absolute beast. I think he's so fast that he's almost too fast for his own good, because you see a lot of times he'll just take off on a run, and he's an absolute machine. He reminds me, he's basically the left back version to me of a Valverde. So Valverde, who has this seemingly, unstoppable, or, just a gas tank that never quits. That is the same thing I'm seeing from Fran Garcia. The guy is running and making crazy runs and piques, as we say in Spanish, these massive sprints, even in 90 minutes, so even in the 90-minute mark, he's still doing that and going, tracking back and fighting for the ball. He's a gem. That dude is great. So that guy is great. I mean, I think he's obviously going to win his position over Mendy. Carvajal, for all the things we've said about him in the past, that, obviously he's got, we're worried, obviously, going to always be worried about his injuries. But, with him with the captain's armband, man, he's really stepping up. But, somebody brought up another good point the other day, and it was, because with this 4-4-2 system, he has a little bit, his defensive, he can play a little bit more. He's not required to be as, essentially almost like as box to box as a left back would be attacking than he would be in a 4-3-3 position, where essentially he's got to run up and down that right flank. Now he has somebody else pretty much placed in front of him most of the time, right? So, which is Valverde, who can run up and play that as well. So, he's doing it. I guess his defensive role is a little bit more focused than it was in a 4-3-3. So, but either way, I think he's doing great. Obviously, Militao was a big loss, but I think Rudiger is doing a good job. Alaba is doing a good job. Fran Garcia is doing a good job. So I don't really see, and Tchouaméni, always the CDM position is sort of the quiet killer, the guy that doesn't get a lot of the hoopla for him because everybody's obviously so focused on Bellingham, but the guy who's quietly, creating that stopgap and creating that wall in between the attackers and the defense. He's kind of the first line of defense before the attacking players get to the defense. Tchouaméni has been doing a phenomenal job. So really, I think that all of our players have been doing good. But I still stand by, I feel like what I said was, and I liked what Carlo Ancelotti did, was you still need to have, I think, Kroos or Modric in the midfield to kind of get away, to kind of calm things down. Because what we saw with Athletic is when you had Camavinga, when you had Valverde, when you have Tchouaméni and you have Bellingham, all young guys sitting in that midfield, there was, a lot of nervousness. There was a lot of misplaced passes, kind of like, they're like maybe their bodies and their minds are moving too fast. So they're not thinking before they do things, essentially. So their bodies are going quicker than their minds are working, So I think that's why, as somebody that is so experienced calculating the conductor per se, whether it's Luka Modric or Toni Kroos. Toni Kroos obviously is really good at slowing down the ball and the pace and picking out beautiful passes and making those making those passes and to score goals and picking out those passes, and then Modric is really setting the tone and such a great playmaker when he moves up the pitch. So we saw that as well against Almería. So both of them, I think one of them would need to be on the field. Obviously not both of them. I think we're way past that, and everybody knows we're way past that. But one of them being on the field, so you have to sacrifice, of course, either a Valverde or a Camavinga in order to accommodate one of them. I wouldn't sacrifice Tchouaméni unless maybe you're going to put Camavinga as your pivot. I wouldn't sacrifice Bellingham, of course, because the guy's on fire right now. Unless you need to kind of give him some rest. You're not going to play him day in and day out. So I'm really liking what I'm seeing, but like I said, I'm cautiously optimistic. It's still very early in the season. The good thing I'm feeling is that the teams that usually chase us, like Atletico and Barcelona. Barcelona obviously dropped points in their first game of the season. Atletico dropped points in this second game of the season. But the ones to watch are obviously other teams that we tend to sometimes drop points against, whether it's a Betis, whether it's a Valencia, who's started off doing well, but I still don't think they're going to. I mean, their problems exist, but they've actually pulled out wins. But they pulled out wins against Sevilla, and then I forgot who they played the other day. Who did they play? Anyway, I'm not going to look right here. I have it in front of me, but anyway, so yeah, like they haven't been tested yet. They haven't played a Barcelona. They haven't played Real Madrid. They haven't played Atletico, and they'll probably lose points against one of those guys. I really feel like that's going to be the fight this season. Although Betis is another team that I always I like to watch. I like Betis. Out of the Sevilla teams, that's the team that I want to see succeed. I don't want to see Sevilla succeed because I feel like they always try to make our lives difficult when it comes to any player we want to buy. And then, of course, Cristóbal Soria from El Chiringuito is from Sevilla, and he's always talking shit about Madrid. So and I know that's his team, so I want him to suffer. As well as I do Barcelona, and I don't like Valencia either, just because of all the things that have happened in the last few months with Vinicius and all that stuff since the last game. And Valencia, they've never really liked us, even though in the past, Valencia was one of the teams that I actually enjoyed watching back in the day. But I'm like I said, cautiously optimistic. I don't know how you guys feel about it. Are you cautiously optimistic? How are you feeling about this? Listen, obviously our and I keep on saying obviously, but the thing is right now, we are all thinking the same thing. I know, like when I ask that question, how are you guys feeling? And I say, besides the fact that, yes, we need a number 9, hopefully we can get another right back to deputize Carvajal, because Carvajal is, we're always worried about potentially losing him to an injury. And then the person you have is Lucas Vázquez, which, as for all his Madridismo and for my love and hate relationship with him, because I like him, but then I feel like he's not exactly the greatest. But he is, a very, he's that, Swiss Army knife that you need, that squad player that you need when push comes to shove. And he's got the Madridismo and he's got the heart, and he's always going to play his heart out. You need somebody else at a right back position that can offer a little bit more, I think. And so I think really, besides that, obviously Thibaut, so we have to see what's going to happen. Is it going to be Lunin? Is it going to be Kepa? I trust Lunin. I think just give him a little bit more minutes. This guy had won the World Cup at one point with the Ukrainian national team. So, he is a solid player. He plays for Real Madrid. I think we should give him a little bit of time to sort of get into things. But now now that he has Kepa behind him, is he going to step up? If not, we got Kepa, but is Kepa the solution as well? No one's going to be able to replace Thibaut Courtois, really. I mean, that's the guy. That's the man right there. All right, and so besides that, like I said, this is it's still the beginning of the season, but I'm liking what I'm seeing so far, even though it's shaky. Hopefully something cool will happen. Although I think now, I mean, obviously, I hate to be this guy, but I'm still always optimistic that we might bring in somebody at the last minute. Is it going to be Mbappe? I don't know, even though I don't want to mention his name. Are we going to do something else? Although everybody tells us that we're not. And usually with Real Madrid and Florentino, we're probably not going to bring anybody else. And it's anybody else as much as we want to, as much as fans want to. Florentino's going to be like, nope, didn't happen. We're still waiting on Mbappe, and that's the way it's going to be. So just deal with it. And that's the situation we're in, So we'll see what happens. Because I never football is crazy. Football is crazy. Things can happen in the drop of a hat, and especially during transfer season, the transfer window. So am I going to hold my breath about it? No. It's basically like the idea of hope for the best, prepare for the worst. So I'm prepared for Real Madrid not to make any signings. But I'm hoping that they will make a signing. And I just saw somebody post. It says, in the next 20 years, Man City will overtake Real Madrid as the club with the most UCLs. Mark this tweet. So this guy, I am saving this tweet because I doubt this is ever going to happen, and I will wait 20 years. In 20 years, I'll be 60 years old, a young 60 years old, and I'll make sure to remind him that he wrote this crap, because no one is going to ever catch Real Madrid, because in 20 years, Real Madrid might have already added an extra 5 to 10 UCLs. So that is my quote to that. That is my my thing about that. All right, guys. So that is essentially the podcast for today. Sorry that I've been late, but like I said, that's just the way the cookie crumbles since I've been busy with work and everything, and I'm trying to balance everything out. But like I said, I'm going to do this once a week. I'm going to try to always push it out once a week. Make sure you subscribe to us on Twitter. I'm sorry. Yeah, well, subscribe to us, not on Twitter because I don't have Twitter Blue, but follow us on X/Twitter at Nada Más Podcast, on Facebook at Nada Más Podcast, at Instagram at YNM Podcast. We're also on Twitch, and I'm going to try to do I want to do one of these reaction videos, and I don't know whether I do these, and so you guys can answer that question for me. Should I do one where it's kind of like a follow along on, let's say, Twitch, and you follow along live as we watch the game, let's say, together? Or should I just post a reaction video? I don't know. You tell me what you guys think. Send an email at info@inadamas.net. That is our email address. If you're interested in writing for us, shoot me a line at info@inadamas.net. If you feel like you should be on the podcast because you have an amazing following and you have a lot of very good tactical knowledge that maybe I don't have, because yes, I am not a tactician. I am just a humble Real Madrid fan. Shoot me a message on Instagram, on Twitter, or at the email address at info@inadamas.net, or on YouTube as well. Leave it in the comments. So do that, please. Subscribe to our YouTube channel. We are trying to grow. Obviously, YouTube is something. I was talking about being a content creator. If you want to make money off of this thing, you have to continuously put out content. And I'm not, as much as I want to make money just doing Real Madrid stuff, I have a day job that actually is the one that pays the bills. But I do this because I love it and I love Real Madrid. So, help me get some more subscribers. I would really appreciate it. Subscribe to us on Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. Stitcher's actually gone now. So it's Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts. We're also on the iHeart Radio app. I believe. I don't know if it's updating all the stuff now. And also check us out on Spotify. Spotify's the other one. So we're on the big ones. On all the big ones, you can find us there. Pocket Podcasts or whatever that is. There's a bunch of different places. If you don't find us on some place, let us know, and that will be a place that we'll put the podcast on next. Anyway, that's it for now, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for listening to this episode of Y Nada Más, and I hope to see you guys again soon. Thank you very much for listening, and I'll talk to you all again soon.